Martin Popoff here, back again with another edition of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. This is going to be a long one. This is going to be a deluxe one because we've got the great Lester Bangs writing a long review of Master of Reality, Black Sabbath. Okay, so this is for Rolling Stone. I'm reading this to you from my trusty Rolling Stone Record Review Volume 2. Look at that thing, eh? I've even got a Volume 1. We're going to put the Volume 1. Look at this. This is even older. Look at that one. So there you go. And oh yeah, I had these out as well, by the way, before we get started. I can still supply my Black Sabbath early days storybook, Sabotage, Black Sabbath in the 70s, and I still have Born Again, Black Sabbath in the 80s and 90s. You can get those from martinpopoff.com. I'll sign them, ship them out, PayPal buttons, all that. So let's get started. So the idea with this show, of course, is we look at a period review and see if the reviewer could articulate this more or less correctly for the times, for the future, realizing that it's a big deal. Let's see what the great Lester Bangs has to say here about Master of Reality. And then I'll comment maybe paragraph by paragraph, because this is a pretty long one. Okay, so he goes, the second generation rock audience, that is those who went steady to I Want to Hold Your Hand and Get Serious with Highway 62 Revisited, suffer mightily wrestling with the phenomenon represented by Grand Funk and Black Sabbath. If nothing else, though, both Funk and Sabbath are, for all their monotony, at least supremely consistent, as opposed to shtick collectors with no personal vision like Deep Purple. Actually, I'm going to stop there, because all he can compare to so far is Grand Funk, which isn't that heavy, but they're kind of heavy early on, and Deep Purple. And what he's saying here, he's realizing that we have a heavy metal band here, kind of subconsciously, because he's saying they're consistent. They stick to one sound. And he's already comparing them to Deep Purple. Now, this is 1971. So really all we've had is Deep Purple Mark I, the classical album, and In Rock. But he's saying Deep Purple's kind of even all over the place, right? And then he goes and says, and since when is monotony so taboo in rock and roll anyway? Rock has been some of the best of it too. In large part monotonous from the beginning, hypnotically so, as right-wingers would say. Wow, they even used right-wingers back then. As far apart as they are, Black Sabbath is only slightly more monotonous than James Taylor or Joni Mitchell, and any Stooges or MC5 fan who disdains Black Sabbath is just bigoted. So he's realizing that really the only other heavy stuff we have in the world to date so far is Stooges and MC5, and he's saying, look, if you like those guys, you're going to like Black Sabbath. So that's kind of cool. The thing is that, like all the best rock and rollers since the Pleistocene era, Black Sabbath and Grand Funk have a vision that informs their music with unity and direction and makes their simple structures more than they might seem. Grand Funk's vision is one of universal brotherhood, as when they have spoken of taking their millions to the White House with a list of demands. But Black Sabbath's, until Master of Reality anyways, has concentrated relentlessly on the self-immolating underside of all the beatific let's get together platitudes of the counterculture. So he's getting that part right. This idea of Black Sabbath is a doom band, doom and gloom. And then he's saying Grand Funk is actually kind of an activist band, which is kind of cool. Take our millions to the White House and make demands, right? Their first album found them still locked lyrically into the initial spiritualistic satanic hype and was filled out mostly with jamming, while Paranoid reflected that theme only in the great lines in War Pigs. Generals gathered in their masses just like witches at black masses. Kind of cool. He realizes right away that there's a fair bit of satanic stuff on the debut album, and there's really only the one line. So he's very perceptive, Lester, with his knowledge of Black Sabbath at this point, right? The rest of the album dealt mostly with social enemy in general, with the title tracks, Picture of Total Disjuncture, rendered with authentic power too, to Iron Man's picture of an unloved Gollum in a hostile world, the stark picture of ultimate needle freak breakdown, painted in the Philippic Hand of Doom, and finally the unique Fairies Wear Boots. I went walking late last night, suddenly got a fright. I looked in the window, was surprised what I saw, fairies in boots dancing with the broads. Is that even right? Dancing with the Bride? I don't think that's right. Anyways, so that's kind of cool. He gets you get a little mini review of Paranoid there. That's quite entertaining. And besides, isn't all this Christian falderall just the flip side of the Luciferian creed they commenced with and look back on balefully in Lord of this World? And for those of us like me who prefer the secular side of Black Sabbath, there's Solitude, a ballad as lovely as any out of England in the last year, with flute yet, and Children of the Grave, with revolution in their minds. The children start to march against the world they have to live in. Oh, the hate that's in in their hearts. They're tired of being pushed around and told just what to do. They'll fight the world until they've won and love comes flowing through. I'm not saying that either that or the arrangement it's set in is the new My Generation, but it is a rocking, churny addition to the long line of defiant, self-affirmative, and certainly a little defensive songs that goes right back to the earliest whap and wail of rock and roll. It's naive, simplistic, repetitive, and absolute doggerel, but in the tradition. So, again, a mention of the repetitive. He's not really glomming onto how incredibly heavy Children of the Grave is compared to anything that's come before by anybody, basically. But he's touching upon it, but it's just kind of going, it's like, oh, whatever kind of thing. So this is one of the things I like about doing these shows is did they cotton on to how heavy things have been? Chuck Berry sang in More Repressed Times, "Don't bother us, leave us alone. Anyway, we almost grown." The Who stuttered, "Hope I die before I get old," but the MC5 wanted to kick out the jams or at least escape on a starship. And Black Sabbath have picked up the addled quasi-political desperation of growing up in these times exactly where they left off. Freedom fighters sent out to the sun, escape from brainwashed minds and pollution, leave the earth to all its sin and hate, find another world where freedom waits. The question now is not whether we can accept lines as obvious and juvenile as that from a rock and roll record. I think they're great. Geisler makes great lines, I think. They should be as palatable to anyone with a memory as the stereotypic 2 and 3 chord structures of the songs. The only criterion is excitement, and Black Sabbath's got it. The real question is whether Black Sabbath can grow and evolve as a band like the MC5 has, so that there's a bit more variation in their sound from album to album, and that's a question the group hasn't answered yet. Interesting, he mentions the evolution of MC5 because all we've got from MC5, and this is going to be it, and it happens to be in this year, 1971, is we got the live album, Kick Out the Jams, then we got the kind of retro, thinly recorded, bare bones album Back in the USA, and then they truly evolved on High Time. It's a very ambitious, wayward, all over the place, various sort of album, pretty complicated arrangement. So he kind of got that right. Little did he know that was the end of MC5. Not all of this, incidentally, was rendered in laborious sinks of lugubrious bass blasts. Several of the songs have high wailing solos and interesting changes of tempo, and Paranoid really moved. If you took the trouble to listen to the album all the way through. Not sure why he's mentioned Paranoid there again. Master of Reality both extends and modifies the trends on Paranoid. It has fewer songs if you discount the 2 short instrumental interludes, but it is not that the songs are longer than the first record. The album is shorter. The sound, with a couple of exceptions, has evolved little, if at all. The thick, plodding, almost arrhythmic steel wool curtains of sound the group has celebrated and reviled for only appear in their classical state of excruciating slowness on 2 tracks, Sweet Leaf and Lord of This World, and both break into driving jams that are well worth the wait. Which itself is no problem once you stop thinking about how bored you are and just let it filter down your innards like a good bottle of Romalar. Rock and roll has always been noise, and Black Sabbath have boiled that noise to its resinous essence. Did you expect Bones to be anything else but rigid? Interesting. Resinous essence. That's really cool. So he's really realizing that this is super heavy. He's not noticing particularly the pretty vast difference in production. Paranoid is a pretty mid-rangey album, well recorded, hits you right between the eyes. It's got enough bass, but this is really bassy and really kind of redlined all over the place. It's quite innovative recording of Master of Reality. The rest of the songs, while not exactly lilting, have all the drive and frenzy you could wish for in this day and age. Thematically, the group has mellowed a bit, and although the morbidity still shines rankly in every song, the group seems to have taken its popularity and position seriously enough to begin offering some answers to the dark cul-de-sacs of Paranoid. Sweet Leaf, for instance, shows that Black Sabbath had the balls to write a song celebrating grass at this late date, and the double entendre, if you can even call it that, is much less tortuous than it would have been in 1966 with an added touch of salvation from grosser portions. My life was empty, forever on a down until you took me, showed me around. Straight people don't know what you're about. Unfortunately, the religious virus also rears its zealot head in After Forever, which is a great Yardbirds type arrangement, nevertheless, and despite its drubbing us over the head with God is the only way to love, it does have the great line, would you like to see the Pope on the end of a rope? So that's funny. this was the time where Sabbath, there's some great quotes about them being scared of both the witches and the Jesus freaks, as they call them, right? So Lester is almost thinking that they're pretty straight about this, like they're hitting us over the head with the Bible kind of thing. And that never kind of became a thing that anybody really thought about the song After Forever. And it's funny that he compares it to the Yardbirds. So here you get one of those classic old time. He's writing this review in 1971. What else can we compare things to? He compares After Forever to the Yardbirds, which is pretty nuts, right? And so when it's signed off, we even get the date here. So this is written in November 25th, 1971. Very cool. So there you go. That was another edition of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. I think Lester did a pretty darn good job for 1971. God love Lester, right? Anyways, let's sign off now. Go listen to some Master of Reality.